Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Your Handmade Business Television. We are so glad to have you joining us today. I am Isaac Watson, co-director of Academy of Handmade, and this is a weekly series dedicated to helping you navigate all things #MakerLife. So each week we try to tackle a topic that we think gets deeper into what's really going on in your business. And of course, with me is my co-conspirator at Academy of Handmade, Sharon Fain, who
Hello.
has some major wisdom to drop in this episode. So as if you are just joining us in here, please introduce yourselves in the chat so we can learn more about who you are and what you make and where you're from. And what else? This episode is brought to you by a holiday publicity intensive, which is a very exciting thing that Sharon's put together to help you work on the publicity for your business, specifically around the holidays, but giving you a lot of foundational stuff to work on media relations and media strategy throughout the year. Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit more about what you're offering with this?
Yeah, definitely. It's basically going to be about 4 weeks of us going through you getting ready to pitch to the media and me helping you figure out everything you kind of need to do to make that happen, and letting you know what's going on and where I see opportunities, and basically how to do your approach. So it's kind of like a training wheels program in a way. Like I'm here to help you and give you the insight and give you even some media contacts. But ultimately, you're going to be the one to approach the media, and I think it's going to help you guys a lot with any other media pitches you do. So it's not just for the holidays specifically. It could be any time of year, but this is sort of with an eye of thinking about the holidays and gift guides and things like that. So.
Yeah, Sharon has a lot of experience in PR and media strategy, and has worked with a lot of people on things like that. So she's definitely a great person to talk to. And if you want to learn more about it, click the green button below the video that says Holiday Publicity Intensive, depending on which side the video is on. Plus, it's all backwards, right? Anyway.
Right.
So today we are talking about things naturally that are related to that, which would be getting your media strategy game on point now during what we're calling our Christmas in July series, which is high time to be working on all of your wholesale stuff and getting ready for the holiday season that seems so far off, especially because it's the first day of summer today.
Oh yeah, that's right. Today is the technical official first day of summer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Now, I have to say, ironically, yesterday in Portland, it was like 91 degrees and sunny. And today it's like 73 and cloudy. So, starting out of summer off with style. Spring was like, see ya. Bye, Felicia.
Yeah. No, I mean, right. It's really like there's vacations. You're just like in a totally different mode in the summer. And you're not wanting to think about, I feel like, the holidays at all. Plus, I think there's a bit of adrenaline junkie in a lot of people where they like the pressure of the holidays. And so they kind of are okay with procrastinating. But the whole point of this series is that there are two things that really kind of screw you a bit if you procrastinate on them too much, which is wholesale, which we talked about last week, which you guys should definitely watch. And then media strategy are two things that I think that if you put it off too much, you're kind of really like basically gonna get nothing out of that. So that said, we wanted to talk about a few things that you should be thinking about right now. And so this is just a way to help you gear up for the holidays and start putting into place what you should be doing. So the first thing you should start doing is start looking for editorial calendars for publications. This is kind of a basic and I think like pretty common advice, which is at the beginning of the year or a little bit before that, magazines, and this is usually mostly for magazines, will publish their editorial calendar, and they usually do it for advertisers so that advertisers know when they want to advertise certain products, right? So they give sort of like themes and like special topics that month. So start looking at those to see if there's anything that you kind of fit into. But basically, one of the things that I think that everyone will fit into is like everyone knows that there's going to be holiday editions that start to come out usually in November. Or there'll be a December issue that usually happens at the end of November. So just, you know how magazines work. You usually, whatever happens in whatever they call their December issue usually came out a week or two before in November. So know that they're going to be, that basically the editorial thing is holidays for sure, but a lot of times it'll be like home for the holidays, and if you had something that fit into that, like other special things. So editorial calendars for magazines are great for that. However, if you feel like, if you're not really like looking in for a lot of magazines, and a lot of magazines I feel like kind of have moved away how they do editorial calendars, a good thing to do is look at the stories that they did last year. What were the types of gift guides that they did? Now, they're probably not going to do it exactly. They're going to do something fairly similar, but you can kind of get a good idea of what this next year will probably look like. And you can also even just start reaching out to whoever was doing those editorials that you liked last year and ask them what stories that they're planning for this year with products. They might not always get back to you, but sometimes they will, especially if it's like, somebody who's more of like an assistant type position. So that is definitely something to start looking at what the deadlines and things like that for magazines are. Within these editorial calendars, they'll give advertisers info on what like the advertising deadline is. And that's the deadline for advertisers to have their ads ready to go. That is not the deadline for you to have your pitch to them. You want to pitch to them earlier than that, usually a few weeks earlier. Because it takes them time to sort of figure out what they want to put into the magazine. Yeah. So, yes.
I was just going to add that the advertising deadline is usually the artwork deadline before a magazine goes to press. So they've already got all their content locked in. So yeah, definitely plan ahead from that. If you look at an editorial calendar and you see an advertising deadline, do not follow that deadline.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a deadline for you.
Unless you're going to advertise, in which case.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next thing you should be doing is start figuring out what kinds of magazines, sites, Instagram accounts, influencers that your customers are looking at. And that is a good way for you to understand where to pitch your product, because you obviously want your product to be in places where the people who are going to buy your stuff are at. It can be great to get coverage sometimes in, some sort of random magazine or website that was interested in your stuff. But if the people reading it aren't really your customer, then it can kind of not net you a lot. So figure out the ones that you want to spend your energy on, and those are the ones that your customers are already looking at. So I would just go ahead and say, ask them what they're looking at, ask them what they're reading, ask them where they're going to for fun information, what blogs they like, what IG accounts they follow, all of that stuff. If you have a customer profile, this also helps you understand sort of that person a lot more automatically. But go into magazines and look for similar products that have been placed too, and that will often tell you if you don't have customers that are telling you where to read stuff. And if you're not finding a lot there, if you sort of look to where you had competitors or similar like-minded products, so it might not be, if you do candles and you look for another kind of, very similar candle company, that might not always happen. But if you do nerdy, quirky stationery and someone does nerdy, quirky baby stuff, you might be going into the same place. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same product, and see what sort of stories were done on them last year and how you could kind of manufacture the similar stories. Did you have something to add to that, Isaac?
Not on that one. No, I think you nailed it.
Okay. So the other thing that you might want to consider doing is start making a list of who to contact and when you're going to announce your product. So this is your own internal calendar, based on the fact that, if you're going to start pitching to print, you're going to want to pitch to them first and earliest. And then if you're pitching to, bloggers and other people, that doesn't necessarily have quite the same urgency. You definitely want to try to open that earlier rather than later, before middle of November. But definitely start looking at your own list of when you need to launch this stuff. And this also goes for you to when you're announcing your products to your own customers, because that is going to help generate buzz on top of whatever these other magazines are also looking for too. It helps in a general sense of creating an aura of there's energy around your product, if that sounds a little woo. And also start thinking about how your products are going to fit into gift guides. So gift guides are usually the things you see in magazines, which are this collections of items where it's gifts for dad, gifts for mom, gifts for kids, gifts under $50, gifts for friends. And then they'll start doing things that are kind of wacky, like gifts for the avocado lover, sensual gifts. I don't know, they'll start doing gifts that take more niche turns. And a lot of times that's an opportunity for your product to show that okay, your product is maybe part of an interesting niche trend where it's not just your product, but there's other products that could get rounded up together in that. So that's a good time to think about how your product fits in with a trend and something that, is kind of interesting and quirky and, I guess fun. I feel like editors like to feature things that are unique, even if it's not 100% of their audience. It's kind of an interesting, like I said, the avocado lovers or something like that. People get excited about that. I
was going to add that when I had my maker business, I made bracelets out of old camera lenses, and I always got picked up for gift guides for camera lovers or for photographers.
Yes.
And so if you're thinking about places to pitch, it's really easy to think about the big publications that tend to focus on gift guides for broad sets of people. But you may also consider, if you have products that are a little more niche or industry specific, that you could target those types of blogs or publications that cater to that particular audience. So going after, in my case, a photography blog was beneficial, or a photography magazine instead of just a jewelry magazine or something like that.
Definitely. And then if you're thinking about gift guides and just as you're preparing all of this together, cannot be said enough, but editors really like things on a white background. You might have some very lovely lifestyle shots, things, models wearing your jewelry. You might have your items, your candles placed in a nice vignette in a house somewhere. Those are great, but and possibly editors might be interested in them, but people always want stuff on a white background, and it just makes it so much easier for who's ever assembling that gift guide to choose your item if everything they've already got is on a white background, and so is your item. And maybe Isaac can talk about this more since he has a design background about what having a white background entails.
Well, I think that there's, so first of all, it gives a lot of flexibility. It means they can lay it out however they want on the page. But I see all the time, and this is still a thing that happens when you get editorial gift guides or collections of images or things like that, they always do what's considered a knockout. So they knock out the background and just put the product on the page, and maybe they have like a a color flood behind the page or something like that. But it basically, having those images with a white background allows the person doing the page layout of the magazine to be way more flexible with all the different things that they're assembling together into a grouping. So rather than having to fight with photoshopping out the outline or cutting it out and making it look really janky.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't possess the skills to get it on a white background, I would highly suggest trying to find a photographer or someone that you could work with to have that happen. Those are usually pretty easy product shots to crank out versus, a lifestyle photo shoot. But if you're putting your products on white background yourself, you can just get one of those little like light box situations from Amazon. You don't even need a DSLR camera necessarily. I think we're in the age where most good iPhones are probably adequate too in that situation. But even if you can't work with a photographer, at least kind of going that route, I think will kind of get you there enough where people would feel comfortable clipping your items. You just want the background to be as white as possible. I don't know how to say that, but like sometimes there's like shades of blue or whatever, but it needs to be like a strong white background.
Yep. And I think there's some good resources for, iPhone photography and things like that, but even some basic tutorials on adjusting white balance in Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. Is that still a thing?
I think so. I think so.
It is.
Yeah.
There's like a light version of Photoshop, right? But those are going to go a long way to helping you set up your photos in a way that's conducive to being used. Because the last thing you want to do is have an editor cut an item from a gift guide because they don't have time to do all the photoshopping that they need to do because you sent them photos that don't have a white background.
Yeah. And I would say in this case, well, I think your phone is probably great to edit photos and make them pretty for social media on your phone because of how the resolution is going to be and because of, putting them into a magazine. I would definitely try to edit those on your computer as possible because seeing it on the phone's a little bit too tiny and you can't really necessarily see how the photo is turning out. But that's just maybe start with the phone and move over to the computer. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on that.
For sure.
Does anyone else have any questions about getting publicity or have they gotten publicity and would like to share an experience about that? You can put it in the ask a questions area, put it in the comments area. Both would be great. Do you want to share about your experiences with gift guides and stuff like that, Isaac?
Well, I think it's been a while since I had my maker business. I think one thing and I know this came up last year, maybe it was on YHB TV or it was something else last fall when we were talking about holiday stuff. Be wary of the pay to play gift guide versus the full-on editorial gift guide. Some publications, especially like local, your local monthly or weekly paper or whatever, may do like a sponsored, an advertorial, if you will, where they want you to pay $150 to be listed in their gift guide or something. Those usually don't have nearly as deep a reach as a full-on editorial, which means they're choosing it they're deciding to include it in there and it doesn't cost you anything. So just be wary of that. I think the other thing, just in my experience, and just because this is on my mind lately, if you're diving into any kind of editorial calendar of your own, or making a list of who to contact, mapping out your plan, put it in a spreadsheet or Airtable or some sort of document where you can track, especially as you start to get responses. Like if you get, oh, hey, we're not accepting submissions for another month. Great. Make a note of that. Put a deadline on your calendar, set a reminder. Anything you can do to set up your systems now in June and July, instead of waiting until September, October, and into November, is going to set you up and make your job so much easier when it comes time for that.
Yep. Yeah, I'd totally add, if you're going to be paying for a placement in a gift guide, I mean, that there's nothing wrong with that. Like, advertising is great. It's fine. It's definitely not the same thing as pitching to a gift guide and getting in. That said, because, right, like that means this person's kind of accepting anyone as long as they're paying them, whatever that publication is. So if that's the case, and if you're paying money, then the problem that I see a lot of times happen is that people feel flattered that they've been asked to be in this gift guide and they're paying to be in it. You should not feel flattered. You need to, if you're paying money, you're the customer, and then that means you need to interrogate them on, what the circulation is, how much, how big everything's going to be. What is the spread going to look like? Do they have samples from last year? Is it going to be the same? If you're one of 20 products, like, that's fine. If you're one of 200 products, well, then you're probably going to get lost. And so the amount of money doesn't seem as fair. And if it's advertising, depend on when they're coming and approaching you, depending on what it is, you can kind of push them for extra stuff. Like, they have ways to throw in other things for you. So don't be afraid to negotiate on that, because again, like, if you're spending $150, $200, $300 on being in, a local publication or even somewhere online, that person, you're the customer and you should be asking the questions, and not, it's not exactly the same as approaching an editor.
Yeah, that's true. I saw Greta posted a question in the chat. She's asking about what resolution should you send with your images for gift guides in particular. I think my advice on that would be generally as high a resolution as you have available. If you don't feel like you have very high resolution stuff, basically most print stuff does well at 300 DPI or PPI, at whatever size it's going to be printed at. So if you're thinking about an editorial gift guide in a magazine, for example, let's say it's a full spread in the magazine, so it's 2 pages, and they've got 20 items assorted. Maybe each item's going to be 1 by 2 inches or something like that, is about as much space. So 300 DPI at 1 by 2 inches should be okay. However, you don't know exactly how they're going to lay out their gift guide. They may want to do a big feature image with the main thing and then a bunch of little things around it. So just send the highest thing you have. Now, most publications will also have specs that they'll want you to follow for images. They may say, we need it at least to be 2000 by 3000 pixels or something like that. So definitely defer to any requirements they provide. But the general rule is highest you can possibly go, or 300 DPI at the expected print size.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing, did you mention thinking like an editor?
No, I did not, I don't think.
So one of the final things that I was thinking of was, this is a great time to start thinking like a magazine editor, and think about how an editor might evaluate or categorize or even find a pitch to be appealing. If you can get into their heads a little bit, like what's new and different. I mean, editors are always, especially of more popular publications and blogs and stuff, they're always trying to do something new and different. And catch the eyes of their readers because they want more eyeballs on their page, right? So any unique ideas that you have, or unique ways that an editor might go, huh, that's interesting, I've never thought of that, or this is, I never considered that I could feature X product with Y category or something like that. Those are always great ways to get inside an editor's head and be thinking about how they approach their job and what they're trying to put together versus you just saying, hey, look, it's my product. Hey, look, it's my product.
Editors care about their audiences a lot. And so the more you can show that you understand that audience and how your product relates to that audience, I mean, I think that shows that's a lot right there. If you're kind of all over the place and you don't really understand who your customer is, you haven't really researched who the magazine's audience is, and you kind of just like women, and it's like, but there's a specific kind of woman, like then the more that you'll be able to connect your products with the editor. So
yeah, I mean, you're not going to pitch your baby product to GQ, right?
No. I mean, maybe, I guess they're doing ads or something.
I mean,
you could, but you have to be really clever about how you do it.
Yeah, the other thing to think about though is like the flip side of what are some of the different ways that a standard publication where they might not take a second look at your product, what are some of the different ways they could use it? Like, maybe Vogue is going to do things for the guy in your life, and they want like really trendy hip stuff, and you make bow ties, like that seems like a perfect fit. Whereas otherwise you could pitch that to Vogue and they'd be like, what are you talking about? Our readers are predominantly female.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Which is when sort of the editorial calendar can be helpful in understanding what sorts of things they usually like to feature and talk about, or what special things will be in their magazine in the coming months. So, all right, I think that's basically it. I think you guys are ready now to start investigating some media strategies before it's too late. If you guys want help with your media strategy and getting your products ready for publicity, the Holiday Publicity Media Intensive is at the link below, and you can click on that and get more information and sign up, and I'll be sending out some more emails about it as well too.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we will not see you. I will see you back next week because Isaac has a conference that he's doing. So he will not be here, but I will be here, and we'll just go over sort of a wrap up of other miscellany that you can do to get your business ready for the holidays in July. So we will see you all then, you guys. Thanks so much for being with us. Have a great day.
Bye.